Hello, it's Steve Grisetti, co-founder of MoviePix.com and author of the Movie Pix Guide to Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum 10. And here we are with part 4 of our 8-part session on basic training with Vegas Movie Studio HD. Here in part 4, we're finally to the nitty-gritty, right? We can finally make a movie. We've started our project, we've gathered our assets, and now it's time to start adding those assets to the movie. Just in terms of vocabulary, a very important thing to understand is that when clips, before they are added to your movie, are here in the project media panel, they are known as media. There are certain things you can do to media that you can only do to media, okay? Once a clip has been added to your timeline, it ceases to be known as media, it becomes an event. And it's real important you understand that because that's a general vocabulary that's always used when discussing Vegas. There are certain things you can do to an event on the timeline that you can't do to a media clip. Now we saw in session 3 that you can trim a clip in the trimmer before you add it to the timeline. You can also trim an event. Once something's been added to the timeline, you can drag on either the beginning or end of it here. You can see that that little indicator shows up on the end. And when I drag on either the beginning or end of the clip, I can change its length. I can trim off things from either end. However, I can also split the clip and I can remove something from the middle. To split the clip, I position the timeline cursor or the playhead over the area I want to split, and then I go up here to the edit menu and select split. You can see I also have a shortcut of just using the S on the keyboard. So when I press S, it slices my clip. I can isolate an area in the clip by positioning the playhead again, pressing S again, and now I have a middle section of the clip that I can select and delete. Now I want you to notice something, that as I have been removing or trimming parts of my event clip here on the timeline, that there's been certain movements. For instance, when I deleted the middle section here, you notice the clips shifted left to fill in the gap. That has to do with something called timeline rippling. Now let me add a couple more clips here to show you what I mean. And we have sort of a mini movie that we've created here. Up at the top of the screen, you'll see that there's an option panel for auto ripple. And that auto ripple can be turned off or turned on. When it is turned on, if I were to select a clip or an event in the middle of my timeline and delete it, the rest of the clips slide to the left to fill in the gap. The events slide to the left to fill in the gap. It's a ripple effect. Things ripple like ripples in a pond, right? One affects the other. If I turn off auto ripple, I can now select a clip, and when I remove it, there's a gap. It leaves a gap. Now, there are certain times when I do want things to ripple and move around. If I were to put a clip in the middle here, you can see that what happens is I overlaid on top of several clips because auto ripple was turned off. If, on the other hand, auto ripple is turned on, and I put in a larger clip, or I add a clip and clips from the media panel, notice now what happens is that all the clips on my timeline, all the events on my timeline shifted to the right here to make room for the new event. So rippling is very important to understand. It's kind of complicated, and I do try to spell it out in the book over a big 2-page chart to show you all the ripple functions and how the settings work. It's real important to understand because otherwise the timeline can get a little confusing. You can't quite understand why this time when I removed a clip from my timeline, all the other clips shifted left, while next time when I removed it, there was just a big gap in there. Now those are the basics of the timeline. It is such a high-level workspace that I dedicate 3 chapters of the book just to the timeline alone, and there are lots of other peripheral things going on, including special effects, including pans and crops and animations that all work on the timeline. It's a tremendously powerful workspace in Vegas Movie Studio HD, and one just loaded with tools, one well worth getting to know. In our next tutorial, we're going to look at special effects and what happens when you add effects to video and audio clips. Just some of the basics of that, and that's coming up in session 5 of our basic training with Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum 10. I'm Steve Grisetti. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again real soon.